but it's also impacted the economy worldwide. And we are right now in the middle of a recession, because for the last two economic quarters, the economy has actually contracted. So that's pretty much the definition for a recession, and we are going through it right now. And you can see that what is certain, the only thing that is certain right now is the uncertainty. And even any of these ADB and World Bank and IMF are grappling with what exactly would be the real estimate, the real cost. And this keeps shifting as well, because until there is an end to the pandemic, the numbers will continue to rise. So you look at, it could be the cost as of now, it could be anywhere between 5.8 to 8.8 trillion. And already we have lost around 12.5 trillion globally. Here in India as well, there has been a major impact, as you all know. And in fact, while the government did a good thing by going in for anticipated and the severity and went in for a lockdown, it has also unfortunately impacted the economy with the growth, falling, and it will continue to fall over the course of the next 1 year. However, the good news is that recently PwC did a survey of chief, CXOs, and 82% of them believe that by June 2021, in India, the economy will start to revive. So that is some hope for all of us to look forward to. As you know, some of the sectors are more severely impacted than others, especially travel and tourism, aviation, automotive, real estate, MSME, the smaller startups. A lot of them are going through really tough times. Here in Spain, I can say that an economy which a lot of it is dependent on travel and tourism. A reason for this contraction is because basically these are the tourist seasons, and there is basically nobody coming in because of all the restrictions imposed by the by other countries as well. Which is, as you know, this has kind of been our normal now over the last few months, especially. And as you all know, all around the world, there are tighter immigration laws in place where countries are restricting travelers or any other visitors coming in unless you have a credible reason and you live and work there. And this is going to continue for a foreseeable period until there is a vaccine in sight, or there is a definite treatment, and the pandemic is under control. Along with travel restrictions, and what has been impacting the economy is like a worldwide shutdown of a lot of manufacturing. Factories are getting shut down, disrupted supply chains, mainly because of our dependency on China, as the world is discovering, over dependency on one region for supply chain. And while all of this is happening on the global side, but some of oil prices are collapsing, and all of those are happening. On the consumer side, as we all know now, and very much part of our daily routine now, we continue with social distancing, and we continue with sanitizing and wearing masks. And while the way we work, play, and live is changing, like most of our work right now is now online. Very few of us, unless we are in healthcare professionals or in other areas, essential areas where we need to be really at the site, have taken over to online. So does, not just that, we also do our shopping and our even our health, our entertainment, all of these things. So basically the way we work, live, and play have moved over to an online platform. And as you can see, because of all of the uncertainty, a lot of us are deferring our high-end purchases, which is why, sectors like, if someone was in the market to buy a car, they would now think twice. And in India, the automobile industry, for instance, has been severely impacted. And what they say is around we're losing $300 million as this pandemic goes along. So tough times for all. And one of the learnings, but along with that, as we progress through the pandemic, we are learning a lot of new different things, and human beings are generally quite resilient, and we are learning a lot of things that are helping us to deal with this pandemic. One of the things which we are doing is there is a greater dependency, as you know, on technology. All of our meetings have gone online, our education has gone online, our health consultations have gone online. So what we see is, the move towards a digital platform, and both companies and individuals and organizations are moving towards that end. For instance, if I talk about telemedicine, as you know, in India, the new telemedicine practicing guidelines were finally published in March of 2025, which was a very welcome move. And what has happened now is the numbers, earlier it was kind of looked at something for just to reach the rural population, but right now most of India is getting on the telemedicine, or utilizing telemedicine services to kind of, at least for consultations which does not require emergency care, but for your treatment of your common cold and other ailments using telemedicine. In fact, interestingly, an online platform for doctors like Practo, what they have found is week on week, it's 100% growth. And the number of doctors who have signed up for such a platform has also gone up by 50%. So these are some interesting numbers that are coming up. Cyber and data security, extremely important at this time, as a lot of people continue to work from home. There is, and outside of the confines of the organizational, infrastructure, there is a lot more cyber attacks that people are prone to, organizations are prone to. There's a lot more phishing happening. So this calls for stronger investment. And these are some of the things I will later on talk about, that organizations are looking at tightening to protect their employees as well as their customers. E-commerce, as you know, has, as while of the retail, has gone down. The online retailing, offline stores are going down. The online e-commerce continues to grow. And like we all know, platforms like Zoom and Teams are registering huge growth with 200 plus million subscribers and users. And these kind of things continue to grow. And earlier we talked about the over dependency of supply chain focused on one region. And one thing a lot of organizations are looking to invest in quickly is trying to integrate technology to kind of using IoT devices and automation to help strengthen and build resilience into their supply chain, so they can track the movement of goods and figure out what's going on in a better way. And you also know 3D printing. Even in Kerala, we have seen some of the startups getting into this to kind of build and help contribute ventilators to the hospitals through 3D printing. So a lot of technology innovation and technology reliance is growing, and it will continue to go, and there will be an acceleration on digitization as we go forward. Now, one interesting slide before we jump into the key content is, along with all of this, for all of us who are remote workers at this point, the workplace is also transforming. So earlier it was already transforming, and we talked about it, and we always talked about how things will change. But right now we are in a situation where it has already changed, and we have to adapt. So as you can see, the future of the workplace or the employee is going to be like, or is already here, is you can work from wherever you are, and which is why countries like Barbados and here closer to Spain, Canary Islands, all of them are offering, individuals who are working or run their own business to come in and work from there with, with special incentives, so that it doesn't matter where you're working from. And this helps in terms of for organizations as well, because they have a bigger access to a lot more bigger pool of talent rather than just their local talent. So in one way, that is a great thing to go. And as you can see, this very interesting, evolution, a lot of it you already know. We are becoming a very knowledge sharing society. We work on any kind of devices. So these are things, that transformations that are already happening in the workplace. And most importantly, and as you go along this presentation, you would see I have mentioned it many times, learning and development, learning and teaching, so, are getting democratized. And so that will happen, and especially technology will have a major role to play in that. And all of this is what is going to be as we go through the pandemic. Now, when Dr. Vineet and Abhi approached me for this webinar, they were talking about, specifically, are there any pointers we can share around leading through these challenging times. Now, as you all know, this is the toughest time for this is the toughest time for any leader as we're going through, because the uncertainty of it all, because we really don't know what's going on, and we really don't really know when there is an end to it. And leaders have to operate within these to figure out what are their priorities. And there is no playbook here. There is nothing to refer to. And whatever we have done in the past is nothing compared to what we are. We are in a completely different situation right now. So it's very interesting times, and sometimes it's tough, challenging, but these are also times which offer us a lot of opportunities, both for learning and to also come out and emerge stronger. So as we go through, and I put together this slide because I feel these are the areas which, in the short term, medium term, and long term, that leaders or management has to focus in any organization across any sector. So first and foremost is surviving this pandemic. And you have to understand that, we don't know when the pandemic is going to end. We have a lot of best guesses for it, but we really don't know the end. So the first and foremost for any leader in any organization, in my opinion, is that they have to ensure their employees' safety, health, and mental well-being. Because at the end of the day, your organization is good as the talent you have or the people you have in your organization. So your biggest and first and foremost is to ensure that they are taken care of, they are okay. Of course, along with that, because a leader has to manage multiple priorities. And if I were to summarize the priorities, I would say basically 5 things. Right. First is, employee health and safety. Then, of course, you have to build resilience. So, you may have had business continuity plans, but are they able to meet with the situation, with the challenges right now? You have to build resilience, and you cannot look at the short term. You have to build resilience that's going to last really long, and are able to, if any, God forbid, any other kind of pandemic or other situation comes, is your organization be able to meet with it? You have to then look at your costs, your financial health. Extremely important, because in your survival mode, that is what you need to look at. You need to look at, optimizing your costs, reducing any of those indirect costs, project costs, any capex investments that are maybe not necessary at this point of time. In fact, you need to optimize those costs and look at maybe putting them in areas of priority, which are more priority, which are of greater priority at this point. Also, to survive, you need to pay your salaries, you need to pay for the expenses that an organization will go through. You have to secure your liquidity. You have to ensure that you have cash flows and funding. And if need be, you may need to also approach the government for support. And as you know, worldwide, a lot of governments are now bailing out a lot of companies because to ensure that they survive through the next few months. And very importantly, business continuity plans has to be in place and constantly looked at because things are evolving and changing as we go along. Then, when once all of this short-term things are well in hand, and all of these have to be balanced through as to what comes first. And interesting, and before I go into the what next in the medium term, one interesting story I wanted to share is, you've all heard of this adage, keep calm and carry on. I think most of us have probably got the mugs or something or t-shirts. But basically, if where it came from, it was actually coined by the British government. This was a time when, during the World War, and this was created as posters to put in place where the areas which were being targeted by the German bombers. And towards before they were finally putting it 2.5 million copies printed out, they thought, this could be becoming too obvious and too patronizing. So they kind of decided not to do it and they destroyed most of it. But a few of those copies survived. And and 20 years ago, someone discovered it, and then it has become kind of like an adage. And this is exactly what a lot of leaders have to practice at this point, because you are fighting against an unseen enemy, and you need to be at your best to kind of go through all of this to deal with the challenges in front of you, and you have to lead from the front at this point. As you kind of first look at your immediate priorities, you then start to look at how do we recover the lost revenues, how do we get back into more of a starting to grow situation. So you want to focus on that, and for that you will need to reimagine, rethink, redo your business models, because you will have to come back to the drawing board and go through it and look at what does your customer really want. After going through a pandemic, a lot of us have different needs, or maybe we look at different priorities. Similarly, for an organization, at the end of the day, what does your customer need? Am I giving them value? Am I doing it in a sustainable way? A lot of companies are actually going through that exercise and will have to go through the exercise if they have to emerge and survive and basically thrive as we go along the next few months. I already talked about the importance of technology and how technology is being leveraged. Digitization, and you've probably seen this everywhere. There's going to be a big focus, an acceleration of digitization and digital transformation. An important thing to remember is that, before, when companies were doing digital transformation, and that we have talked about in various forums, and a lot of us have been talking about digital transformation, the most important thing to recall then was that it was it was self-paced digital transformation. Right now, there are no options but to get into the digital transformation bandwagon, because you have to ensure digitization and ensuring that your processes are most effective. It is important for business continuity. It is important for productivity. So there is no other way but to focus on getting that, and that is one priority or one of the top priorities for a lot of business leaders. As you all know, if you're in manufacturing, a lot of us have been impacted by the supply chains and over-dependency. There is now a strong move to look at rejigging the supply chains and looking at more, local supplies, domesticated supply chains. What I mean by that is the global supply chains are not going to go away, but it's only about, trying to also have multiple diverse sourcing, so that you are not dependent on a single supplier or a single region for sourcing. And so a lot of this is happening right now. And as I said before earlier, supply chains are also going to be integrating technology, because at the end of the day, things like IoT and automation are required to ensure that, organizations are able to track and adapt based on the movement of goods and where it's going to. So this is, and it's ultimately the whole idea being build where you sell. And that is the most simple thing. So you focus on, and especially with all the closed borders and things, really, and the global demand down, right now is the time to go look at your local markets. And if you have building it, you build your local supply chains as well. And, as you go along, then you're looking at one of the biggest lessons that we need to learn from this pandemic is that we need to, just as we're rejigging our supply chains, our business models, the way we operate, for anything to be sustainable, we need it to build an organization where the growth strategy is built on something that is of value, that has a sense of purpose for the greater good, and is going to be long term. There is no point in just putting bandages where the issues are cropping up, because you need to set your long term vision straight at this point, and you need to revisit your current existing partnerships and maybe form new partnerships with, like I said, if you're focusing on local markets, you may need to, connect with unlikely partners before, maybe who are maybe startups who were not previously, due to whatever reason, maybe due to the cost efficiencies or speed of delivery, you were not considering, because at this point you need to look at various options. And as I said, as you go along, you need to have a very purpose-driven growth. And throughout my presentation, and I'll bring out pointers again and again, this is something very important, because sense of purpose, at the end of the pandemic, something that we need to remember is, there is going to be an end for sure. But at the end of it, what are the lessons learned? Are we creating something that is going to, benefit humanity as well? And are we doing it the right way? I think these are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And along with, as we go through this various short-term, mid-term, and long-term strategy, three areas require, and these are the underlying factors or the pillars that is going to support this entire strategy, three-phase strategy. One is strong leadership and management, and I'll go into it over the next few slides. Then, of course, most of you probably know the importance of having a great corporate culture and the right values. And most importantly, how do you communicate all of this, both to your internal stakeholders as well as your external stakeholders? So let's look at a little bit of the leadership factor in closer detail. So we've already talked about it, and one of the sayings I quite like is, crisis does not build character, it reveals it. So a lot of leaders right now are getting tested for how they are going to be dealing with this pandemic. Like I said, you need to be calm, you need to be leading from the front, but you're not alone, because you also have a team of people, and you need to identify those team of people who are going to help you out. So the first priority or the order of the day would be to really look at your current situation, which was the survival mode, right? Like basically securing your funding, securing your cash flow, making sure your employees are healthy, making sure you have business continuity plans in place and you're able to implement them. But also along with that, you need to identify opportunities that are coming up. So there are instances, if you can see, and if you've probably heard about or read, there are companies which have been severely impacted by COVID because of the lack of demand, because of factories being shut, or the supply chains being stalled, who are getting into other areas which they are able to do with their existing resources. So you need to identify new opportunities, maybe look at different products that could help. But for all of these, a good leadership, a good leader at the helm is extremely important. Some of you, many of you would have read Satya Nadella's Hit Refresh. Very interesting memoir. If you have time, if you haven't read, please do read it. It's quite interesting, and how he talks about how the turnaround he brought about in Microsoft. And well, this was pre-pandemic, of course, before Corona. But the point is that those kind of leadership and which helps the business transform are going to hold the organizations in good stead. What he talks about in that book is how when he took over in 2014, the organization he inherited was losing market share to Amazon in cloud services. And generally, there was lack of innovation due to a number of bureaucratic levels. Bureaucracy was very strong, so it was inhibiting innovation. And there was a lot of fierce competition and internal politics, not a good, healthy competition, but internal politics. So, which meant that it was stifling teamwork. So his entire idea was to kind of create openness and transparency and create a learning culture so that things, over the few years has improved. And as you now know, Microsoft Azure is doing extremely well, and really the growth rate with 117% or so against Amazon. So a lot of good things come when you have a strong leader who is also open and really focused on changing the culture, which I'll talk about in a little while. As I said, the leader is not alone. He needs to build a team for basically supporting him. And what I find useful is to have a task force or a war council. You can call it a war because it's a war against an unseen enemy, for quick decision making and communication. And this could be, it doesn't necessarily need to be only from the senior management. It could be from different levels in the organization, but capable, competent individuals. And it's best to keep it, maybe 7 to 9 or that kind of below 10 anyway, so that the numbers, there are not 20 people trying to take decisions at the same time, but relevant departments or people coming in together to ensure that, almost like a startup, they have daily connects. They are reviewing the situation and able to address challenges and plan for the future as it's coming along. And how do they plan? You need to focus on various scenarios. So you need to look at, that is the only fiscal tool right now that we have in midst of all this uncertainty. So you have to look at what is the best case scenario. Best case scenario is the vaccine coming, there's an effective treatment, and the pandemic just disappears, and there's no that's the most best case scenario, and then recovery is starting to happen, and it's a fast recovery. What could be the worst situation, which also for which the organization needs to be prepared, is, okay, there is going to be prolonged recession. There is going to be a second wave, which is going to hit bad. So leaders and their teams have to really look and plan on against these scenarios that may arise. So because as of now, you don't have any definite idea of which scenario is going to play out. And it's also changing from country to country. But as you know, it's a global village. At the end of the day, we are all impacted if one country is still going through this. One of the very important piece to look at is how you deal and communicate during this time. And I'll talk about the communication in a bit, but just to say, because it's very important that a leader communicates with empathy, and that's also part of that culture building, because many of your employees are going through tough situations, working from home. While it's nice, you're gaining on the commute, the hours on commute, but there is a lot of mental pressures as well. You're working longer than before. Some of you may not have dedicated areas to work through, so there is also uncertainty in terms of, would I be able to hold on to my job? So it is important for the leader to really understand and communicate and act in such a way that empathetic nature is tapped into. And very importantly, I said, like earlier I mentioned, you have to create a task force of your talented, competent individuals. Invest in your talent, and invest in your talent means it's about your existing talent, upskilling them, reskilling them if need be, and ensuring that they are mentally, their mental well-being is also taken care of. And even though they may not be in the office, it is important to ensure that they feel included and part of all of the organization's growth. In fact, it's important to ensure the well-being of your internal talent, and put some time and energy and thought into growing your talent. Um, Culture, I've always stressed, even for things like digital transformation to be successful, it is not just dependent on IT, it is finally dependent on people and the corporate culture. And I have always said this even when I was with Nissan, it all starts from the top. We have to take ownership. We need to ensure that it's not just one person, walking the talk. It's all of the leaders through their actions have to show in spirit and in action what they're doing. And you have to instill a sense of purpose, because every employee needs to feel that whatever you're doing, your job is connected to something that has a greater purpose, or so, because that's what inspires. And I can tell you, with a lot of millennials, more than compensation, it is actually that sense of purpose and what is the value, the company values, and all of that shared purpose that is more important. And when you create a culture, he talked about Satya Nadella creating a culture which is openness, transparency, and that is in these kind of work environments is where innovation starts to thrive, right? And those should be rewarded. When I was at Nissan Digital, we started something to encourage the youngsters, especially focused at the younger talented software developers, to look at how do we bring in innovation, how do we think, how do we present, and we used to run these quarterly hackathons. So things like that, that's all part of building the culture, because you cannot build culture in a day. You can't, it takes time, and everybody has to kind of work towards the same goal. Very important at this time is to be an agile organization. In the context of IT, a lot of us talk about agile, and a lot of you, if you're in the IT world, you would know agile methodology and the organization, how you bring in projects, multiple projects, all of that. However, it is not just relegated now to IT, but it's a practical methodology to follow for the entire organization. What it means is you need to be flexible, you need to learn to adapt. And like I said, when you have multiple scenarios playing out, you need to be able to adapt and quickly plan and implement as you go along. And like I said, you have to build an environment, a company, an organization where everybody is valued, can speak their mind. I mean, in a positive way, of course, and be able to able to collaborate and share rather than being shot down and being given a certain few people, like basically get rid of or don't support politics. But for this, and to encourage innovation and independent thinking, it's not just the focus, it's just not the prerogative of the leaders, it's also about any individual teams also being very disciplined and willing to really look into themselves and try and work towards building a better culture. um, Communication, we already talked, I talked a little bit about it. Extremely important at this time, and especially when things are changing from, on a very regular basis. Leaders need to be active and ensure that communications are going out and they are accurate and authentic, and they help build trust and solidarity among your employees as well as your external stakeholders like your clients. Some of the things I would recommend organizations do, and you would also always have, probably if you're a big organization, have your communications and marketing teams. But basically, you should have a schedule, especially at these times. You should be looking at sharing communications through multiple mediums, and you have to capture those nuances that are required to ensure whether whatever channel that you use for communicating the message comes through. And as I said, scenario based planning is very important, and your communication should be pre-prepared so that you know that in the event of the best case scenario or the worst case scenario happening, you have almost ready-made content ready to go, and the process and the protocols that you need to follow. And it's important that communication plans, for these communication plans, I mentioned having a COVID like a task force basically within the organization. It's good for these folks to be also be part of that, to ensure that it's quickly reviewed, signed off, approved, so that it doesn't get lost in layers of authorization, but people sign off very quickly and the message is shared. And it's very important to communicate so that people, especially because you're working remotely, it's important that your organization shares with you what's going on and what are the plans. And because that helps the employees and customers feel valued and be part um, of the entire plan. And finally, the growth strategy, we already mentioned it. We'll have to figure out how do we grow with a sense. We need to have a sense of purpose and a value as the organization grows. This is a great time for us to reset, rethink, and repurpose, and kind of then look at how do we operate and grow with a better sense of purpose and value as we go along. And we need organizations to be more resilient and grow sustainably. So it's about a best time for leaders to take a look at how do we do that. And we already mentioned, as companies, organizations are finding out, you need to diversify your sourcing, you need to rejig your supply chain models, you need to leverage your technology, and you need to look at, maybe either limiting your products or innovating and looking at new products, and getting into, new markets, local markets, so that you're able to sustain in the long run. So I know I've taken more than the time probably that was allotted, but I hope these are some of the factors that you can ponder, and if there are any questions, happy to answer. But I feel the pandemic, while with all of its challenges and difficulties, it has allowed us a lot of time to think and plan and action for a new beginning, a more sustainable new beginning. Thank you.
A very nice talk.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Abhi. Thank you, Dr. Vinay.
Yeah. Thank you, Suja, for going such extensively into the depth of what actually is that we have cut into. culture, communication, growth strategy, and each and every, like as you said, the nuances of things where the leadership should look at. And I urge the participants, if you have questions, please raise the hands as a reaction so that we can unmute you and you can ask directly.
I think
Dr. Sini had a question. Yeah.
Sini, can you just unmute yourself and ask the question that you have put on the chat box?
Hello, Suja.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Happy to join you for the webinar. And my query is relating to IT industry. Like when you take the
Can you be a little bit louder, Sini? Can you be a little bit louder?
Hello, is it audible now?
Yeah. Yeah. Now it is better.
Hello, Suja. I feel very happy to join you for the webinar. Like my query is relating to IT industry. Like if you take the case of IT industry, we can see that certain businesses like automotive domains is being negatively affected in this particular scenario. But certain other domains like medical domains is growing. So how can a business leader cross-train the employees towards those growing sectors within a speculated time interval? Is that cross train will it be effective, and is there any pros and cons of cross training people towards growing domains in an IT industry in this particular scenario? Is it possible?
So thank you, Sini. So good question. So the point is that when, especially in IT, while of course domain expertise takes time to build, some of the learnings that you have from another sector will always hold valid, even if you are applying it to a different sector. What companies probably train you in is to look at specific technology skills that are required. Because they cannot train you on experience, but they can train you and upskill you on certain technology skills or other soft skills that you require to move to a different domain within the same organization. And there, what you bring as value is, you maybe you would have been helping out the automotive sector. The automotive sector may be down for the foreseeable, for some time, but that doesn't mean it's not going to come back. However, there are lessons learned, there are areas that you have used your skills and which is always transferable to any other domain that you would operate in. However, the employer would look at what are those skills, your technical skills or business skills that are transferable, and anything else that are not, they maybe put you on a learning or a certification or something that they would need you to do. However, there is nothing like it cannot be interchanged. And that's the beauty of the IT industry to that point. Because in the automotive world in Nissan, we had people coming in not just from the automotive sector, but we also had people coming in from other sectors. Allied sectors, automotive allied sectors, as well as completely entirely different sectors, because what they bring is their experience and knowledge which can be applied, because at the end of the day, even automotive sector is not about hardware manufacturing, but it's really technology.
Yeah, another question has come up from Dr. Prakash Nair. He's asking, how long will we take to return to our old normal, or is it a thing of the past?
Okay, so I think, like I said, the only certainty is the uncertainty. So it's very difficult to predict. I believe, no one is actually able to predict, because only when you know there is a definitive cure or a vaccine, can we say, okay, we are now on course to end. However, things are getting better. So like I said before, here in Spain, the peak pandemic time was in March to May, where entire country was under lockdown. Now things are crawling back to normal. A lot of, at least from a normal, you can't really say normal because we still have to wear masks and practice social distancing, and we still work remotely mostly. Most of the folks here work remotely, and schools are still online, except for universities are starting to open. So the new normal is going to continue in these kind of hygiene protocols and sanitization until we know that the pandemic is under fully control. However, some of those other learnings and some of resetting the way we work, balancing of remote versus working from the office, the way we do our business models, our operational models, the way we look at learning and development within, our corporate culture. All of those learnings, building resilience, these are things that are part of a new normal because we have time to think, and we should always be prepared in the eventuality that there might be other kind of, disruptions that may happen in the future. So some things are here to stay, and I believe it is for the better for humanity as well, while others will probably go away once the pandemic is under control.
To add up to what this particular question, I'm having a supplementary question, like smaller firms, as you said about the leadership and communication, and also to be with the employees. How far it is very good for the how far it is possible for the smaller firms to sustain when the employers are finding it difficult, the company itself is finding it too difficult to again continue the contract with the clients and all.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? These are tough times. So when we look at, which is why I mentioned the scenario planning. Now, the best case scenario is that we will find a effective treatment, 100% effective treatment. We get a vaccine, things are under control, and the recession, is fast recovery from the recession. Then, even the small firms, I mean, yes, painful right now, but, we may be able to bounce back quickly. However, if the recession continues and the effective medicines or vaccine doesn't come through, and we're looking at prolonged recession, which is going to delay the recovery, then it spells a little bit of tough times actually for all, include and especially for the smaller firms. Who may not have sufficient funding and cash flows as much as maybe a larger organization. Even those folks would be affected. I have seen here, talking to folks here in Spain, to business folks here, where people have had to let go. These were from the travel industry, where they have had to downsize by 50%. But what they have done is ensure a decent package for them to survive, take care of their insurance and things like that. But it is tough times. It's tough times for the employer as well as the employee, and that is where governments are also stepping in, especially here in the EU, with their support, fiscal support, so as to help these smaller companies. However, so that is why we all are, it will all depend on how long this is going to continue, frankly. But the hope is that we also need to be creative in the sense that we need to first look at how do we optimize the costs. Laying off employees should be the final thing. If at all, you have to take that drastic measure. That should be the final thing on any leaders. First way is to see where we can cut costs or optimize cost and bring in some efficiencies, including, maybe renegotiating contracts and things like that. So that would be the first, and see where, maybe government can support. But then there is always a timeline to which this can be done, because, that is why we are all hoping for that miracle vaccine, which is going to help us, unless, this, like the SARS virus, this just disappears in one day and it just becomes a flu. So it's too difficult to really say what would be a definite outcome. I think we are all trying to trying to talk about it as things evolve.
Okay, one more question. I think that might be the last one. Jimon Plamotil, do you want to ask directly? So please, I'll unmute you and you can ask Jimon. No, okay. I'll read it for him. He's asking how will this pandemic time will affect the construction companies with 500 plus employees. Maybe something related to what I've asked, but generally he wants to know about the construction companies, how they survive.
See, I think usually when during periods of economic growth and economic boom, what you see is suddenly there's a lot of construction happening, right? And one sign of revival of economic is when you start to see the cranes and the bulldozers coming back and starting to. Right now, real estate is taking a bit of a beating because a lot of office space is lying empty, and people don't want to invest. In fact, companies least priority would be capital investments at this time because you don't really want to invest in infrastructure. Instead, you are investing in technology and looking at other priorities to ensure the well-being of your employees rather than build up capacities or build up new infrastructure. So definitely, construction would take a beating. However, it is also important to maintain, the other social infrastructure, right? So that goes on a maintenance periodic maintenance and things like that. Those kind of it slowly start to revive as companies have more cash flows and more. I start to feel that recovery pattern. But until then, it will be wait and watch. And construction, real estate, like the rest of the really impacted industries like travel and tourism and all of that would take a little bit longer to come back to normal. I think of all of the sectors, IT and pharma are probably and healthcare are probably doing on the less impacted scale if we were to look at it. But the others are, there is some to really a lot of impact, and I think the recovery will depend on how long the pandemic will be there.
I think
One more last question.
question.
Vinith, one more question. Dr. Syriac Joseph Vembala have asked, do you expect a structural change in business after the pandemic or in the new normal situation? A structural change in business.
I believe if you are a smart business who has thought about it in the long term, this is the right time for a real structural and a real change, right? Because you need to build an organization into a very resilient, long-term, sustainable, like I said, delivering value org than really continuing on what has been. So some of the organization may already be doing that, and they were in a better position to really get up to speed and really meet the challenges posed by the pandemic. While others who are probably clinging on to the old way of thinking, who are not probably getting onto the digital transformation or all of those, would probably now need to speed up and make it an urgent priority, because the way things have evolved means that for them to survive and sustain themselves, they need to move on. And these are times where people have realized that you can do so much better, and how the organizations are able to cope and think of newer ways which are even more productive probably, and more sustainable, less harmful to the environment. So I think structurally things are going to change. Operation models, like I said, are going to change and evolve, and it's only going to get better. And these are the organizations that would be successful in the long run.
So thank you so much, Suja. I think we can wind up with this particular session that is almost an hour or more. Very, what do you call, nourished or enriched session that we can definitely say that before 6:30 and after 7:30, it is something we have been taken away, take away from this particular session about a leader who actually have been a leader and continue to be. And again, thanks from Madhubhumi as well as Max said for being the speaker for the day. And hope will continue this kind of more of webinars from you and as a resource person. Vinny, do you want to add something? And also, I also thank the participants for coming here, enjoying the session, and also being participating in this.
Yeah, so Evi, yeah, thank you very much, Suja madam, for coming here and speaking to all of us. And it was because again the time zones are different, and you're talking from Spain. We were just wondering like how will we catch up with you on this, but it was really good. And just one request to you, and you agreed to the whole thing. That was very nice of you, very kind of you. And
one more, just the swing. Usually, webinar talk is on. Please make to us. So I just mentioned since if I forget that thing. So over to you, Vineet, for winding up.
Yeah, so thank you very much, madam. And it was really nice hearing to you. And we have been hearing you on different forums, but again, yeah, for on Mathrumi Maxit webinar, it's a very special occasion. And thank you all the participants who have joined us from different parts of the country. I could see the names coming up. And so it is really a wonderful feeling when the is being accepted by the people and the masses. And a big thanks to Mathrubhumi, who has been a pillar of strength behind us and supporting us in this endeavor. And they have been supporting. It's not a 1 day webinar or a 2 day webinar. It's sustaining this energy for 7 weeks with 7 speakers is not an easy thing. And we are going to have August 15th is the last webinar that we're having. And just want to tell everybody about the next webinar that we are coming up with. The next webinar is we are announcing the speaker. Speaker is Professor Niharika Bhora. She's a professor of IIM Ahmedabad and faculty chair of leadership and change management. And she will be talking on a very relevant topic, that is emotional agility during challenging times, the steps for adaptability. So on this note, I thank everybody, the speaker, the participants, everybody, Mathrubhumi, for being with us this evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, Suja madam.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you so much.